Hi, and welcome to another edition of Newsmakers. I'm Jerry Roberts. It is Friday, April 22nd, Earth Day. Happy Earth Day to all of you. And we are joined by our panel of top local journalists. Janene Scully from Newshawk joins us from the North Bay. Ryan P. Cruz of The Independent joins us apparently from his kitchen. And Josh Molina, international man of mystery and the Joe Rogan of Santa Barbara.
I assume, Jerry, you introduced the main event last, the marquee name, because consistently I'm last in your introduction. So I just assume you're just building up to it.
Yeah, that's exactly right, Josh. Take it to the bank. All right. And Nick Welch is hanging out there somewhere in the ether. We hope to hear from him shortly. All right, real quick, the story that's occupied us for the last 2.5 years. COVID numbers are slowly growing. Cases in Santa Barbara, 348 as of now, but very few hospitalizations, so that the Omicron subvariant appears not to be making people sick, in conjunction with the fact that a lot of people have gotten the vaccine. A judge lifted the mask mandate for travel, but now the Biden administration's decided belatedly to challenge that. Gavin Newsom has delayed the vaccine mandate for grades 7 through 12. And a new UC Berkeley IGS poll shows that only 4% of voters consider COVID to be a serious problem. How about that? And it ranked 13 out of 15 issues with housing affordability, homelessness, gasoline prices, and crime.
Then why are you leading the show with it, Jerry? I mean, come on.
Because I'm responsible, Josh. All right. Speaking of crime, Janene. So we had this episode that's been going on for several years, where the global crime gang MS-13 was attempting to take over Santa Maria and committed multiple murders in the I guess I can say they did it now. I don't have to say allegedly anymore. In furtherance of this goal, and I guess they were some of them were just convicted. Can you sort that all out and tell us where we are with that really big story that only you have been actually covering in a responsible way?
So yeah, the 5 defendants that were on trial in Santa Maria were convicted last Thursday. Sentencing is May 16th. They were convicted of 41 counts, felony counts. It took 3 hours straight, no breaks. I've never seen courts forego their breaks for the employees. So 3 hours straight just to read the verdicts. All 41, one by one for each defendant. They will return on May 16th for sentencing, and they do expect some victim impact statements from some of the family members. And as a remander, these guys were convicted of killing 9 people, conspiring to kill 14 others, all allegedly for the benefit of the MS-13 gang. Now, and to remember, there's also a separate trial of 3 other defendants going on in a Santa Barbara courtroom, basically the same case, 3 different guys, that they had to split the cases because of logistics, and they did that even before COVID. So that trial's still going to continue for probably several more months, and that's a whole separate team of defense, whole separate team of prosecutors, 3 defendants, different jury. I believe it's still, because of the length of the trial, which originally was estimated at a year, I believe both trials have 12 jurors and 12 alternates, just to make sure that they have enough people and don't like lose jurors at the end, especially during COVID. So my understanding is that case is still proceeding. There's a lot of evidence tying them together, a lot of text messages. It was kind of fascinating because of the grand jury transcripts were sealed. A lot of this had been kept under wraps. So the trials are the first time we're hearing about some of the specifics, including text messages showing them discussing chicken, which was their code word for their intended targets, and making soup, which was their code word for killing people. And there were text messages before and after each incident or attempted incident. So it was pretty fascinating.
Yeah. Yes. I guess we're, you know, really used to thinking of MS-13, you know, as a global organized crime operation, Central America, Mexico. When you wrote that they were trying to take over Santa Maria, what did you mean specifically? They were trying to take over the drug trade or all illegal activity, or what?
That's what the prosecutor said. They were basically, and one of the witnesses, that their goal is to become the biggest and most violent gang in the world. And it's all their activity. They want to be tops in all their activity and over all the local gangs. So and it was stark. You know, I've covered this obviously since 2015. It was pretty stark hearing them go through one by one of each of the 9 victims and the killing and the stuff leading up to it. And then each of the 14 attempted victims, some of whom were shot and wounded. And one guy lost his leg from the injury he received. So these are not just, I mean, there's some serious injury to some of these victims.
So does law enforcement now feel that they have broken up MS-13 as a viable criminal enterprise in North County, or is there still activity?
I'm guessing there's still activity. There's, I just was looking up another case, and one of their rivals is apparently here. And there's reference to what their big rival is, the 18th Street gang, which is kind of an offshoot and related. And just looking up another case, and there was reference to the 18th Street gang. So I'm not sure that they're completely gone, but I think based on the number and the violence and the number of shots that were used on some of these cases, I think it's definitely they were subdued significantly. At the same time, around the same time as our case broke, maybe a year later, there was another case in Mendota in Fresno County that took out another large group of MS-13 members. And the other interesting thing about the Santa Maria case is it spread to Oxnard. They found a weapon that was used in Santa Maria. They found it was confiscated in Salinas. So these guys traveled all over and didn't confine their activity just to Santa Barbara County, sadly. So.
Thank you. Thanks for your coverage of all. Is it getting a lot of, does it get covered a lot in Santa Maria? Otherwise, beside your coverage?
I was the only one there. There were 3 outlets, including me, for opening. I was the only one there for closing. There was another outlet there for the verdict reading, but it's kind of interesting when you consider.
I mean, it's such a huge deal, and it's under the radar. All right. Speaking of chickens and soup, Brian,
what does that mean?
Chicken soup back here.
He's in the kitchen.
I think I got some chicken soup in here.
So it's not quite in the same category, but crime of the week in Santa Barbara was
a
this
little
lady
less
with a taser. What? Just quickly, what was that?
a little less violent. A little community kind of helped with the tips on this one. We had somebody reported there was a woman walking around with a dog, and apparently she had got an argument with another 72-year-old woman.
An elderly woman.
Yeah, apparently the woman was on her phone, and that irked the suspect, and she tased her. It wasn't a taser. We got a tip later. It was a stun gun, is the proper term for what was used. There's a little bit different specifically there, but Yeah, so the next day she was picked up through tips through the community, and they picked Violetta at her house, and kind of really don't understand really
What was the beef?
we
She
from
was-
what Nick kind of told us earlier. He's pursuing secondhand what's happening, but I guess there was an argument over her talking on the phone, the victim, and talking on the phone loudly, and then it turned into an argument, and the suspect pulled this pink little flashlight looking stun gun and taser and took off. And
All right, I predict that will be one of the Bill's top 5 next week over on Newshawk. It's just so weird. Josh, at City Hall, I guess the council can more or less kick the issue of rent control, which had been sharply joined in recent weeks down the road. What was the outcome of that big hearing that we were looking forward to?
Well, the official thing they were going to do was decide a scope of work for a consultant. They had budgeted $200,000 for this consultant, and they had preliminarily agreed to that at a meeting prior. But they went into this meeting and they changed their mind and said, we're not going to hire a consultant. We're going to form a 3-member committee to study the pros and cons of rent control, how it can work in Santa Barbara. And this is a shift. This is sort of a different direction, largely because there's a lot of concern about spending that kind of money on a consultant from some of the members of the council. And we heard from some members of the community, although most of the people who spoke were in support of some form of rent control. But the city, led by Mayor Randy Rouse, a different tone than Mayor Kathy Murillo, he is very skeptical of rent control. He doesn't think it works for Santa Barbara, and he doesn't want to go down this direction. So he's willing to sort of compromise on, well, let's have this committee of people who pretty much are in support of some form of rent control, with Council Member Alejandra Gutierrez being sort of the one wild card. But Kristen Sneddon was very clear that she's for some model that works in, I think she said Beverly Hills. Oscar Gutierrez has been very clearly in support of it. So they're going to study it, and it's going to come back. And I don't know what's going to happen, but I don't think anyone's in any rush to make this work.
yeah,
Talk
and
a little bit
Randy
about-
Rouse,
Go ahead.
Randy Rouse, he was pretty adamant about not excluding any other options that besides rent control. So yes, we're talking about rent control and maybe rent registry and stuff, but Randy Rouse was very adamant about we're not excluding anything. So he's keeping these options in there. So we're expecting to see, besides an ordinance for rent control, there's probably going to be some other options floated out there that are not going to be the rent control, which is not going to really appeal to the people that are really hoping for that.
Talk a little bit about the Peter Rupert report and whether that was significant or not. Josh.
So I'll go, then Ryan, you can chime in or whatever, but Peter Rupert seemed to get a lot of favor and attention. Not only did Randy Rouse let him talk first, so there's tons of people.
He's the UCSB economic forecast guy, correct?
Yeah, he's a UCSB economist. He got 5 minutes, and he talked about how no data ever in the history of the universe, 6,000 years old, 4.8 billion, has there ever been a rent control model that has ever worked ever in any place in the land anytime. So he says that, and he cites some examples: San Francisco, St. Paul. He quotes a Swedish economist, Gunnar Myrdal, Milton Friedman, this libertarian. He's like, look, they agree rent control doesn't work. And so he was very convincing, if you wanted that economics perspective on rent control. And Randy ate it up. A lot of people in the room ate it up. He makes a lot of sense. He lays it out. It's clear. It's like, oh, if you do this, it's going to hurt the people who are most vulnerable. It makes a lot of sense. However, I think what he's lacking, and what those people who are saying rent control doesn't work, is not going to work, is the creative solution mind that would fit for Santa Barbara. I don't know what that is, but trying to reach some sort of compromise, because at the end of the day, we can look at all the data We can listen to all the economists. They're probably most of them going to agree, but we can also know that can't Santa Barbara do something around the edges to make it more affordable? I don't know what the answer is, but that's really what the discussion.
And
is
as a
really about.
practical matter, Ryan, we talked a couple of weeks ago about the new districts for the council, which show that Santa Barbara's losing Latino population. So
Yeah, and that was one of the big things, and that's something that we're going to have to address as a city in the next 10 years, because in 10 years we do a census again, and we see the Latino population has left so much so that we can't have these two majority districts, even by moving the districts around and doing this, not barely meeting that 50% of minorities, and not even the Latino, which is at 43% in that district now. Yeah, it's something that's going to have to be addressed, and it's one of those things where, I mean, I'm not an economist, and a lot of the people on the council, they're not economists either, and that's kind of why maybe this ad hoc is we can work with and see how it works in our community, because I think a lot of them had good points that we aren't Beverly Hills, we aren't San Francisco, we aren't a very small town either, so we have a very specific and a mix of people that is kind of like other California cities, but it's also very unique. So to see how that would work here and play out here, I think some sort of rent stabilization could work here. How will that play out? Exactly who will it benefit? That's going to be seen.
well, I'm on my scorecard at home. I have pro rent control, Oscar, Kristen, and Megan, anti-rent control, Randy, Eric, and Mike Jordan. So Alejandra is really the one and she's been getting a lot of pressure.
Yeah, and she's been getting pressure. She embraced the swing vote role in city council. She said, I am the swing vote, and it's because I pay attention to these issues. And she doesn't want to be quick to, she doesn't want to, just because given to pressure of people saying, oh, are you for us? Then vote this. She doesn't want to do that. She wants to see if it'll actually work here. And if it doesn't work this way, maybe it'll work another way, but she's going to, talking to her, she's going to listen to everything before she makes her decision, and she's good, and she listens to all sides, and she will take them to heart, and she's not going to just side with what she wants beforehand. And that's one thing about her, and so she's embracing that role of swing vote.
They like followed her to work and stuff, and
yeah, she said that on her way out of on Tuesday, way out of her driveway, there were some people yelling at her, and there's been signs posted, the rent vigil last week, and this is important to people who are living day to day and, barely making their rent. This is really important when your landlord's saying, yeah, you got to get out now. You don't have time for a ad hoc committee or a study. And I can see that, but there's also, that's the way city government works. And there's the process, and things don't happen overnight. And Megan Harmon, I think, and Kristen Sneddon both said they would have voted for ordinance today if they had the votes, but we don't know if we would have it.
They knew they didn't have the votes, so it was easy for them to say that. Yeah.
So, but given the makeup of this committee, it looks like the fix is in, Josh. I mean, Oscar, Kristen, and Alejandra, but that's 2-1, even if Alejandra votes against him, right?
Yeah, it's 2-1. They're not going to finalize anything, but they'll be able to make some sort of future recommendation. I want to touch on one point. Council member Alejandra Gutierrez talked about how unwise it is for these advocates to be singling out the only Latina on the Santa Barbara City Council. And I thought that was a really good point, because it just shows that one, they're holding her to a double standard. They're saying, because you're Latina, because you're Mexican American, you represent the district, you have to be on our side, okay? So that right there is mistake number one. And then they're going out there and accusing her of betraying her community, okay? That's mistake number two. They made it personal. And then, I don't know if Ryan wants to talk about this or not, but it's just so disappointing that we see this fighting among, the Mexican American, the Latino community at each other for no reason. They're not taking on Randy Rouse. They're not taking on Mike Jordan. They are just like, oh, well, we don't expect that from them. So let's pick on the one person on the council who is probably the most culturally like-minded toward them. Let's pick on her. And I think that's a bad approach from an activist perspective. It's wrong from a people person perspective, and politically, it doesn't make a lot of sense. They are very lucky. She showed them grace and voted what she did. But if you want something from somebody, you probably should not call them a traitor.
Yeah.
Yeah, and
Well
she handled
said.
it very well. And I think
Well
if
said.
if you go back and watch her comments, she handled it really well and embraced that, and said that it hurt her. She doesn't want to feel that coming from people that she really wanted to represent. And she said it well. She didn't get into politics. She didn't want to be a politician. She just felt like she had to get involved. And yeah, it might not be the right way to go about it. And it's from a place from they're hurting, they want to get stuff done, and they see that she's the swing vote. But there's different ways to handle it, and she's on their side. And I think if anybody has a conversation with Alejandra, she'll listen to you. She's not really pushing any of her agenda. I don't think that's been her way since she's been here. So this is far from over.
Yeah. Well, and that's the central dynamic of district elections. You're elected by district, and what's your responsibility? Your responsibility is still the whole city. And I think that's, I mean.
Yeah, and we see that also with Kristen. Kristen's, she represents Riviera, which is a lot of homeowners, but she makes her decision on what's best for the city. And so when Alejandra does that same thing, you have to give her the same respect. You can't say that.
All right, hey, Janene, so Vice President Kamala Harris, California's least favorite daughter, showed up at Vandenberg this week. Mike Pence was up there when Trump was in office not too long ago, as I recall. Why did she come to Vandenberg? And I guess Senator Padilla was there, Salud was there. It seemed like a big deal. What was the purpose of the visit?
She was here to announce the plan that the U.S. would commit to not doing anti-satellite tests like Russia and China have done. Russia did it in November. China was, I think, 2007. And they strike these orbiting satellites. Usually they're their own and they're dead. But the end result is it creates thousands and plus pieces of space debris that then can pose a harm to the International Space Station, to other operating satellites, to astronauts in space. And so she committed, or said the US had committed to banning the anti-satellite test, and was calling on other nations to follow suit. And just basically to keep space more friendly and not create more problems. And more
we're also friendly here on Earth. So basically what, the Russians and the Chinese are taking target practice at satellites, or they're putting satellites up with the intention of taking target practice?
They've done a couple anti-satellite tests. I don't remember what the details of it, but I do know it created thousands of pieces of space junk,
right?
Junk that just basically travels at super fast and can cause big problems if you're up there and get in the way of some of this junk. And she did it at Vandenberg because Vandenberg is home to the unit that tracks those items. It's used to be called the 18th Space Control Squadron, but I believe they're now the 18th Space Defense Squadron, to kind of prove their points that they're more about defending. And they alert satellite operators if there's something in their way and they need to take evasive action to avoid collision with some of this junk. And they can only track stuff the size of a softball generally. So they can't even track the super small stuff.
Right. But Vandenberg is still on the short list to be the Space Training and Readiness Command headquarters, correct? Do you think that her visit was sending any signal about that, or was there any sense that this was somehow going to help Vandenberg's case?
I don't think so. I mean, in theory, those decisions are supposed to be made without politics. I know there's allegations that politics came into play when the Trump administration announced, just like the day before they left, that the Space Command headquarters would go to Alabama versus Colorado, where it's traditionally been. Vandenberg has long been the training site for ICBM missile crew members, the operators and the maintainers. They also have a space training programs where a lot of the military members, airmen, come here to undergo training in their specific career fields, whether it's going to be launching rockets or operating satellites or whichever. But so they've long had this training educational mission at Vandenberg that's kind of low key, and it's informally has been known as Space and Missile University out there. So it's because her tour pretty much focused on the squadron that tracks satellite stuff, I believe that was the prime focus. So
And Elon Musk, who's been much in the news lately, he had another SpaceX accomplishment there. You got pretty excited about that. What happened with that SpaceX crap?
Yeah, that was the day before the vice president's visit. They launched a spy satellite on a Falcon rocket, and it landed. The first stage booster landed. It was the first time a spy satellite had launched on a recycled rocket. So NRO kind of was touting that part, and the rocket returned to land safely. There were sonic booms that apparently lots of people heard. I don't know if you guys heard them in Santa Barbara. You also might have been sleeping like sane people. So.
All right. Just to pivot back to City Hall briefly, Josh, you had a piece about the Service Employees Union representing a couple hundred city workers is in a beef with City Hall, and saying basically that I guess they're working without a contract, and the contract proposal by the city is not to their liking. What's going on with that?
This happens quite a bit in my 20 years of covering City Hall. It seems as though often or several times SEIU, Local 620, the general unit, it's about 450 employees. They have to take their fight to the council, and they have to go public with it to say, hey, we can't reach an agreement. They want an increase in salaries. I don't actually know the specifics. I think Nick may have reported some of the percentages, but they're not happy with what the city is offering, and they want more. They spoke. They said, we can't pay our rents. The cost of inflation, the cost of living is going up. Our utility bills are going up, and you need to treat your city workers better. And so now it's out there. It's public. It's a public affairs issue. So the city will probably start negotiating a little more favorably in their direction. And that's kind of what you have to do with these public labor contract disputes, is take them public, because if you don't, because the nature of the Brown Act, which allows you to discuss labor negotiations in secret or in private, it's not on an agenda where we would see it and go write a story about it. So they have to do this, and I would imagine it'd be effective. They've had a contract since January, and the key part too is it's never one thing. Police and fire, right, are in negotiations. So basically, one union wants to make sure that the other unions are not getting a better deal than they are. Police and fire are kind of wait. Traditionally, depending on where you are politically, the council kind of wants to align themselves with police and fire, but who knows? Some of them want to align themselves with SEIU because of the current political nature. So it's all tied together. Police and fire will be watching whatever SEIU gets, and they're going to say, we want the same and more because we're even more valuable to the city infrastructure. Big demonstration, lots of purple shirts, and probably effective publicity stunt.
Yeah, but former Mayor Murillo was, shall we say, a strong supporter of SEIU, and also got a lot of campaign contributions. Do you know who else on the council gets money from them consistently? I would imagine Oscar does.
I mean, I would think, and I don't know, I would say Oscar and pretty much the most of them do, I would think. Probably Megan Harmon, probably. I put in my story how the SEIU got a 2.5% raise a couple of years ago, and Jordan and Friedman had voted against that.
That's right, yeah.
I did a story, and they were not saying anything other than now's not a good time for this. So I doubt those two are getting donations from them, but I don't know the specifics. But in general, SEIU is a powerful lobby group for elected officials.
Yeah, Ryan, you had a really interesting, touching story this week, of great interest to me, at least, about Alzheimer's and early onset Alzheimer's, and talked to us a little bit in that story about State Senator Monique Limon, in which she's kind of very active in this area.
Yeah, she's been very active. There's 3 pieces of legislation passed this year, and Monique Limon's is SB 861, and that's going to provide a little bit more access to dementia and Alzheimer's care, especially to people that don't really get access. And they've learned through research in the past couple of years that the Mexican, Black, and minority populations are more affected. We don't really know why exactly. They're kind of researching that now, but they take the brunt of this Alzheimer's and dementia, disease. And really, it's kind of taboo in these cultures, and they still to this day don't really talk about it. And if somebody in your family has it, it's like, oh, let's not talk about it. Let's not bring him out. Let's not take him out to the restaurant. It's the 3rd leading cause of death in California, which
that was it. I was really surprised when I read that.
Yeah, that's a big thing. And talking to Tony and Corey, that was just a really touching story. And being able to, Tony's been a big character in Santa Maria for a while. He's been on the radio. He's been in banks and real estate. He's been executive, and he's, to see him, he's only 47 now, and he found out when he was 45, this early onset, and it's a struggle for him and his wife, and it's a whole life change, and almost everybody will know somebody that's affected by that in their lifetime. And it's something that the research is really now starting to get a lot of funding towards. We have one that is approved by the FDA, but it's not really accessible yet. And it's kind of, there's still research to be
very
done.
controversial. Yeah. Well, it's because old people such as myself are living too long. That's the problem here. All right, we got to go. Josh, who you got on the podcast?
Okay, so in case you missed it, I had Peter Rupert and Frank Rodriguez talking about rent control this week. It was.
You got a little shout out at City Council, huh?
Did they mention it? I didn't watch all 5 hours of the meeting, so I don't know. But that was pretty cool.
I think Friedman, he gave you a shout out. He said, go ahead and watch that.
All right, I better quote him in my next story. No, okay. So that's something to pay attention to, but I'm going to shift gears a little bit. I have Jordy Armstrong coming on, who she's a teacher at Santa Barbara City College, and we're going to talk about all forms of diversity in education. So that's one of the topics we're going to be discussing.
All right.
Coming up, Jerry.
Yeah, I got a
You
profile.
didn't get a
coming up.
chance to talk about your Milpa Street package, but people can go back and find that out.
Yeah, definitely check that out. It was nice to kind of point a light at some of the businesses over there. And then next week I have a feature with a sheriff candidate, Juan Camarena, which if elected, he'd be the first Latino sheriff in Santa Barbara history. He's definitely got going up against Bill Brown, who's got a big war chest and a lot of people supporting him. But yeah, I hope everybody gets to read that next week. And he's definitely a good candidate and should be taken seriously.
All right. Janene, how you forecasting handicapping the sheriff's race up there?
I think Ryan nailed it. There's some pretty powerful people backing Sheriff Brown, but I've also seen a lot of Camarena signs already up around the Santa Maria Valley, including out by the new jail. So
is Camarena going to get the Democratic endorsement?
I don't know, but he has got the endorsement from the sheriffs and deputies, from firemen, Alejandra, Oscar. So he's got some names that are getting behind him already, and we're going to start to see in these next couple months now a little bit more from him. Now that he starts to get his name out a little bit more.
Well,
But
it
if
should
Bill
be
gets-
noted. Sorry.
Go ahead, Josh. Go ahead.
Oh, it should be noted that Alejandro Gutierrez and Lieutenant Camarena
Oh, yeah.
are
They
related.
are related.
If he's going to mention that, she supports him.
But if Bill gets 50% plus one in June, it's over, right? Okay. There's no runoff, and it's only 2 candidates.
Yeah, it's only the 2 right now.
All right. Janene, you got anything special coming up we should be looking for?
I don't. I really-
I
Janine
always
has,
enjoy your Sunday reports, though. You have to staff the Sunday desk, which is always
Yeah.
interesting to try to find news on a Sunday, but you seem to always manage to do it.
Janine has everything coming because Janine is super prolific and shames us all at Newshawk. So she probably can't isolate one, but I know there's about 100 things she's going to do next week.
Yeah, I'm still recovering from the last week, the vice
bet.
president visit and the verdicts and the launch. So
Yeah. All right. Well, thank you, Janene Scully, Ryan P. Cruz, Josh Molina. Thank you all for watching, and we'll see you next time on Newsmakers.